Okay, now, hey Sherry, it's Brad. I'm in the yellow field there. How you doing this morning?
Good, nice to see you.
Good to see you too. How's New York right now?
Well, it's beautiful. Fall is coming. I would say our community.
All right, good evening, good morning, everyone. If you could take your seats, we're about to get started. Right, but sometimes you stand there. If possible, so we won't have that as a background. But I want you to feel comfortable, whatever you want to do. Okay. Mindful this way, yeah. Or that. Or that. Okay. Okay. Either. Okay. Okay, Mario, you gonna cut the music? Cut. All right, everyone, if you could please take your seats so we can get started. Good morning. Make sure you have breakfast from over on the side here. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 8 o'clock, so we want to honor your time. My name is Sean Burr. I'm Deputy Superintendent of School Leadership, Partnership Services, and Human Capital Management, and welcome to Children's Cabinet. Normally, the person you see up here is John Norman, who started this group and who has sort of shepherded this group since its beginning. But in case you haven't heard, he's made a transition and left the district. So I just want to, first of all, just honor the work that he did and for starting this group and for he's done many things in the district over, I think he worked here 7 or 8 years, a long time. He was here a long time, and I want to honor the work he did. But he is doing well. He's has 2 young, beautiful girls, if you have ever seen them, and he's enjoying spending time with them. So want to just, he's not here, but thank him for his time with us. And since he's gone, now you have me. I'll be the new executive team sponsor. I'm not as charming as him, but we'll make it. We'll make it through. It'll be a rough transition, but it'll be fine. So thank you to everybody here, and also to the people on Zoom, which we can't see right now, but they're here. And also want to recognize our superintendent, Dr. Jaime Aquino, is here. And do we have any trustees here yet? Not yet. Okay. Former trustee Patty Radel is here. Former trustee. All right, so we have a busy morning for you. We have lots of things to share with you. As you probably know, we're doing something called right sizing in the district right now. So we have updates to share around that, and also our always learning plan. So we have a busy morning plan for you. But before we start, did that. This is also in John Norman's. If you know me, you know these are not my things, but John Norman loved these things, so we're gonna. It's and Jaime Aquino, yeah. So our community builder at your table, or in the Zoom room, please discuss who is your favorite historical figure and why. I'm gonna give you about 4 minutes to do that. Just go around your table and talk about historical figure, living or dead. So 60 seconds left. 60 seconds. Okay, let's come back together. Thank you. And would anybody like to share their historical figure that they talked about? Dahlia looks like she wants to share.
Wow, and that's how you get voluntold, everybody. I grappled with the term historical just because I was trying to put time parameters in my mind, and because in my heart right now I'm holding a very dear coach who just passed away recently, Tracy Goss. And so for me, Tracy came up to my mind because she had just been working with our team on revamping our mission and vision statements. And we talked a lot about what is it, to what end is it, so that kids can graduate college ready? Is it that they can thrive? Is it they can live choice-filled lives? And the statement we landed on, and we'll have to really give her credit, is that they can powerfully engage with life regardless of the circumstances. And it was this idea of, regardless of whatever life brings your way, that you can stand in your power and powerfully engage with it. And just like honoring the reality that there's a lot that we can control, there's a lot that we can't control, and what that looks like. So that's what I shared.
Great, thank you. All right, so we are going to move through the agenda. So today, as I said earlier, we're going to talk about Always Learning, give you an update about what's happening with the Always Learning plan, and then, of course, give you an opportunity to hear a little bit more about right sizing and where we are in our community meetings. I think we have done 13 of the second round, so we have about 10 left. And you'll have a chance to provide us some feedback on our framework and how that process is going. And then Teresa Orabaso is going to give us an update to TEA accountability and our board goals and guardrails. So that's what the plan is for this morning. If you haven't gotten your parking validated, we can do that for you. We have somebody here to do that for you right outside the door. I think John Strelchin will help you with that. And then just to mark your calendar for the next meeting day is February 28th, so a couple of months after the break. And then now I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Jaime Aquino.
Thank you, Sean. Buenos dias, familia. Now I don't know what to do because, like, I've always, when I was in the classroom, I was accused of teaching to the right. But if I teach to the right, there are just so few people here. Most of the people are to my left. So I'm going to be just moving, but I know that we're also on Zoom. So I really want to welcome you to another Children's Cabinet, those of you who are present and those of you who are still joining us on Zoom from across the country. We really value you and honor your expertise. I'm in awe with the collective wisdom that is in the room and your dedication to help us make sure that we're doing right for our kids is truly a gift. So as we begin today, the first thing I want to do is anchor our conversation around why you are here and why some of us spend almost 24 hours of our day dedicated to this district. And this is because we want to do what's right for our kids. That's why we are here. And I want to anchor this around this powerful statement that we call a declaration statement. And Dalia mentioned Tracy Goss. And though she's no longer with us, this is her legacy. Because we spend, the board and I, Trustee Rado, my remember, and my team spent 2 days on a retreat at the beginning of my tenure for us coming up with our declaration statement and in terms of what is it that we want for our students, for our schools, and for our community. And I am so proud of our declaration statement. It's an amazing gift that Tracy led us to come up to these powerful words. The reason I say that is because everywhere I go throughout the city, schools, people talk about and actually are holding us accountable to what we said in those words. And I'm going to tell you how they're holding us accountable just after I share the declaration statement. So it reads, the San Antonio ISD is an inclusive familia that is the destination for transformational learning that makes the impossible a reality by demonstrating an urgent and relentless commitment to love, nurture, and teach all our students as if they were our own, so that they realize their power to shape the world. And you have heard it, you've seen it. Probably, I see many of you, but I see my chancellor, who's been throughout the country, well-known figure, in Richard Carranza. Probably we probably think that this is probably the only mission statement that has a word in Spanish in this country. So that really resonated with me. But the way that people have embraced it in our community, that they ask, even with the right sizing in the community meeting, they ask us, if our students were your own kids, is this the decision that you would have made? And I'm happy to say that the answer is yes, but that they're holding us accountable. When we go, principals always like, but is this what we would do if it were our own kid? Teachers are using that language. So really a powerful statement, and so grateful to Tracy that helped us come to this. So as we engage in this conversation today, I want you to keep in the back of your mind this declaration statement. That's why you're here. That's why we are here. Now, how many of you, raise your hand if you have heard about a very small, tiny initiative called right sizing? So obviously, you have all heard. I think that even Sherry King, who's I saw her in the Zoom from New York, has probably read some of the articles. So all of you are familiar with that. So of course, right sizing is taking a lot of our attention. But one thing I want you all to know, that though that's taking a lot of our attention, we are relentless in our mission to educate every single kid so that they truly have the power to shape their world. We are not losing sight of the price, which is to do what's right for our kids so they can pursue a life without boundary. So that's why I want to give you an update, because though the right sizing is dominating the news, I want you to know that we are still laser-like focused on our kids. And what do we mean by that? It is all what we encapsulated in our strategic management plan, one that we call Always Learning. And I want to remind you that some of our students, and I just saw Raymond, who graduated, here he is, Raymond, who graduated from Burbank last year, and he was one of those students that said, please do not call the Always Learning a plan. It's a document of promise. Very profound words for our student. So the Always Learning is a document of promises. So we, as I said, are relentless in delivering the promise that we made to our students and their families that are captured in the Always Learning. So today I want to give you an update on what we have done so far. First, we have built an infrastructure to make sure that we continue focusing on those promises that we have made our community, our students, and our family. So we have built a system to allow us, you, and the public to hold us accountable for what we said. I want to remind you that when we developed the Always Learning, it was unprecedented in American public education in its level of scope and inclusiveness. So if this is what the community believes that should be our roadmap to achieve our declaration statement, we needed to have a system that allows everybody to hold us accountable. So we have a system that has 3 pillars. The first one you see there is building blocks. The second, training. And finally, the monitoring. I am delighted to tell you that we have selected and began implementing a collaboration software where we have uploaded our plan. That software is going to allow us to do incredible things. The first one is to make sure that our timelines are constantly reviewed in terms of our capacity to deliver them. Do we need to change them? And are we going to be able to make them happen? I'm also happy, and I wanted to introduce them, but he wasn't able to be here today, but we have a director of strategic initiatives in Kevin, and that he is helping us make sure that we deliver on these promises. So those are the building blocks. In training, we have already trained our staff in this software so that we can progress monitor our implementation of the Always Learning. The next step is, and Teresa loves this because she's the queen of data, we're going to have the reports and dashboard that are going to be available to all of you and the public to see how are we doing in the implementation of our Always Learning. And finally, as I said, those dashboards will allow us to make sure we anticipate that that dashboard will come in operation in the spring of 2024, where we are going to be totally transparent and people can see the progress. In the meantime, since we just have adopted this new software system, let me share some of the highlights of what we have accomplished thus far. First, 146 timeline milestone projects have been completed to date. 146. And this is in the last 6 or 7 months after we released our Always Learning. So I want you to be assured that despite everything, like with right-sizing, which actually right-sizing is one of our activity and initiative in the Always Learning Plan, we are also focused on delivering on those promises. And let me tell you some of those that we have been able to do. The first item on our Always Learning Plan was on developing driving profile of a student, of a teacher, of a school leader, of a school, of a classroom, and of a thriving district. And we, under Patty Salzman's leadership, she mobilized our most marginalized parents and community members and gave us incredible feedback. And we now have those profiles that tell us what do we really want for our students, because we cannot continue letting TEA define what a thriving student is. We have greater expectation, higher expectation, and more things that we value as a community. So that has been great. Just right in this room, Dr. Bird and I led a session with all our principals, and we started talking about the profile of a school leader. And we look at that, and we're going to make those available. So I also am very proud that we have been relentless on our focus on equity. Totally relentless. And what does this look like? You know, some of you I see here are members of our Equity Advisory Council, a new council that we launched this year to ensure that we are addressing the needs of our most vulnerable students, that we are always doing everything from an equity lens. And I am very proud that the Equity Advisory Council last year was instrumental because we tackled dealing with one of our most vulnerable population, which was our transgender students. And we came up with guidance for campus, for families, for teachers, on how to treat everybody. You know, I'm always reminded, you know, from former trustee Rado. Like me, we have always promoted a love for humanity in all its size, shapes, and form. And it doesn't matter whether we agree with something, but we have to treat everybody with respect. And I'm very proud of the Equity Advisory Council for tackling that. And we meet monthly to make sure that we are honoring that in our district. But that's not the only thing that we have done. I see Alejandra Lopez, the president of Alliance, who's going to be on a panel today. We have partnered with the Alliance under Patty's we have developed framework around culturally responsive pedagogy. They have been our partners, and it is great to have. It is great, and I'm going to say it because I don't think I have seen this in many parts, Alejandra, where the union is one of the greatest advocate and champion for social justice and equity. And I'll tell you this is why I love this district. And Alejandra and I always don't see eye to eye and everything. That's okay. But I was reminded about how important equity is for our alliance when one of the members in the last meeting that we had, one of their members said, Jaime, I just want you to know that the alliance, we're going to take a public stand. When we had a very challenging right-sizing community meeting where they were angry and they disagreed with the recommendation, but they felt the need to trash other students and families that live in the West Side, and it was just, and Luke from the Alliance said, we're going to take a public stand, that we can disagree with the recommendation, but we are not going to tear down other members of the familia. That is impressive, and I am honored to have been partnered with the Alliance to make sure, and they even take a good stand with their teachers. When the teachers are not willing to do the right thing for our kids, they said, we're not going to stand for that. So really proud. The last piece that I am also, thanks to the funding from the Wallace Foundation, we are in our third year of an equity-centered leadership pipeline. We're one of the maybe 4 or 7 districts in the nation that got this grant from the Wallace. We gave you what it means for us to be an equity-centered leaders. We're training every single leader to be able to lead for equity, which takes a lot of courage to do. And you'll hear from 2 principals who are impacted with our right-sizing during our panel, how they're exercising that courage to lead in the most challenging time. We also gave you a paper Wade, in terms of how proud we have. So really, in all of the work that we've done, equity. We also, under our guidance of our Dari Carrion, our Chief Financial Officer, we've begun to work on a long-term financial sustainability plan. And this is essential for the survival of our district, the survival of SAISD. I'll say this again, I don't know if I said it to this group, but on my first day on the job, on May 3rd, when I had to do a 6-hour budget workshop with my board, you can go to the board website and see a PowerPoint where we said, if we don't take any actions in the next 5 years, meaning we continue spending as much as we're spending today, you layer inflation, and we don't get any more kids, we will have a budget deficit of $342 million, which we're not going to get there. But we have developed this long-term financial sustainability, and it is essential that we do that, because I am having, like many superintendents across the country, particularly in urban school, sleepless night, because this is the last year of ESSER, our federal fund. For the last 3 years, we have been receiving $100 million every single year. So for a total of a little over $300 million, this year, this school year, is our last year. And we have paid so many staff mental health support in our schools that $100 million is going away. So we needed this plan. And also we needed this plan because, I'm sorry, Austin is not going to take care of our kids. They demonstrated in the regular 88th legislative session where we didn't get an increase in the basic allotment. In this special session that began on Monday, They're just talking about increasing the basic allotment by $75 per student. That is an insult to all of us. Really an insult when we are $6,000 below the national average. There was an article this week in the Texas Tribune that says that the only group of employees in the state where the legislative session can pass increases that did not get an increase were our teachers. And it states that our teachers are $8,000 below the national average. So imagine the only group when, during the pandemic, even though I knew this prior to the pandemic, we celebrated our teachers as unsung heroes for the things that they did for our kids. How easy do we forget now when we had a historic budget surplus and they have not done right for our kids. Every single person who's here is here because you had a teacher, maybe more than one, that made a difference in your life. So we needed this long-term sustainability plan to make sure that we keep, as Mayor Garza or Trustee Garza has said, this is, if we don't do something, we will not have SAISD. The other one is we completed our special education audit. Since I got here, we've heard, the cry from our families, from our staff, from our principal that we need to do better with our most vulnerable population, our students with disability. So we completed an audit that we partnered with the Council of Great City Schools on special ed. We received that audit last week. On Wednesday, right here with the principal, we started unpacking what this meant and what are the implications for us. And I think I'm the first superintendent in San Antonio ISD. Dr. Thompson said that maybe the first district who does this, where in the spirit of transparency, we have posted the report on our website. Because there are some celebration, there's some brutal facts, but until we don't acknowledge those brutal facts, we're not going to change the reality. And you all, as members of this community, you're invested. You need to know so you can rally in terms of the issues that we are encountering. On Monday, during the board meeting, public board meeting, we'll have the executive director of the council, Ray Hart, who's going to do the presentation. I did my video that was released today to my staff, was about encouraging them to go and see the special education report and help us find solution. We are optimizing our resources to include our facility, but also how we deploy our human resources to better serve our students. This is the whole notion of right-sizing, and you will hear in a minute about it from Patty. I'm very proud of all the superintendent's committee that we have formed. We have a growth and development committee. We have a student achievement committee. We have an amazing student advisory council that Raymond chaired last year in all of what student-led of what they did. Some of you might have been at the culminating luncheon at the Hilton de Palacio where they presented their findings. Really, really powerful. We have this children's cabinet. We have the equity advisory. We have a district parent advisory. So that we are going out to all our community and embracing them and helping us solve the challenges that we face in better serving our student. Under the leadership of Dr. Thompson, our Deputy Superintendent of Operation, we have established a maintenance blitz team to aggressively address the issue of deferred maintenance. We continue here. I hear from principal, I hear from parents, I hear from students, and we are getting better under Ken's leadership in making sure that our kids and our staff walk into a facility and a building that they deserve. The last thing that I'm really proud and it started was our board when Trustee Rado was there with us, was that we have started the student outcomes based governance. And we have changed the way we do our board meeting. This means that the board is only focused on what is it that we're doing to improve student outcomes. We do monthly reports and tracking publicly of how progress or lack of progress to make with our board goals and our guardrail. So as you can see, I know that the right-sizing is getting a lot of attention, but we will never lose sight of why we're all here, and it's to make sure that we can, and I point at Raymond because he's a recent graduate from Burbank, that it's about students like Raymond, where they will have a voice to be able to chair a committee and talk to legislators and tell them from the student's perspective, what do they want? So thank you again for being here today. Thank you, and please keep us honest. And that's why if we want to make this dashboard available so you can say, well, wait a minute, but you said this, but it's not happening. Because we are counting on you that if something happens in the board in terms of change board leadership, or if I get hit by the bus tomorrow, this community will continue with the focus that we have set. It is the right thing to do for our kids, and our kids deserve this. Our kids cannot continue waiting for us as adults to get our act together. They only have 1 year to do third grade and 1 year to do ninth grade. So neither do our students, the district, or our city can afford any further delay in our mission to improve the lives of the kids. As you know, a city is as good as its schools. So thank you for helping us make sure that every single school is a thriving one where every kid can become you, me, or better than us. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Patty, or to Patty. As you know, Patty's our deputy superintendent, who's going to lead us for the next part of the agenda.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone here in the room, and good morning to those of you who are on Zoom. We want to take some time to go through the right-sizing process, just so that we can be all on the same page. We know that you were aware, many of you, that this was going to happen, but we wanted to give you an update today. So we're going to do 3 things. There we go. We want to do 3 things this morning. We want to give you an update. We also will have a panel discussion. So we'll have some members here that will join us, and we'll have some discussion with them. And then we will also have a table activity where we're going to ask you for some feedback. We are constantly looking for feedback on our process because we are really committed to making sure that we have a strong and well-informed process. So I want to start first with giving you just a little bit of an update and talking about the backdrop around which we have engaged in this right-sizing work. For those of you who may be new and for those of you who've been joining us. So before I get into the timeline where the board called for the resolution in June, I want to just give you a little bit of the context about what was happening before that resolution was called, because oftentimes when we speak about right sizing, we start with the board called for the resolution, but there was actually a lot going on in the background prior to the call for the resolution. When Jaime was hired the previous May, he engaged almost immediately, I think it was actually the next day after he was announced, in a budget conversation. And he shared with us that if we didn't do something significant that we would be significantly underfunded and really in debt as a district, that we had to do something transformational. And so we went around, doing budget cuts in the departments, downsizing our budgets, downsizing our staff in response to that. But at the same time, when school started in August, he visited every faculty. And I think that by the time the school year was over last year, he had visited all but maybe 7 schools, something like that. And one of the things that continued to surface as a pattern and a trend is teachers' requests for additional resources, more staffing, a greater continuum of services, because many of our schools, because they're so small, could not offer a full continuum of services in special education. They also asked the superintendent when he foresaw a time when we wouldn't have to split classes, meaning that some classes are so small, we have to combine grade levels, like you have one teacher teaching a 2-3 split. And in education, that's a very difficult thing to do, because in every grade level, you have multiple levels. And then when you have 2 grade levels, it makes the job even more challenging. And so there were quite a few patterns and trends that we would hear continuously, and the superintendent was having conversations with them specifically about the budget, about what the consequences are of small schools, that small schools meant that we couldn't leverage our resources as efficiently. And the teachers and staff were very vocal and asked him repeatedly, can you do something about this? And so we knew throughout the year that the staff were also asking for us to consider this configuration that had happened over time, losing or this declining enrollment and this maintaining the buildings. Also that year, we had questions from our board and from the community about what we were doing to get more students. So we spent significant dollars. We created new strategies. We did block walking. We did banners. We did signs. We did home visits to see how we could continue to increase our enrollment. And we had a little success, but not a significant amount of success. And because of that, we commissioned a landscape analysis where we had a demographer do an analysis to find out where are our students and why isn't our enrollment increasing? Why is it continuing to decline? And there were 2 significant findings from the landscape analysis. One was that the children are simply not here, while San Antonio is sometimes increasing in population, we're not increasing in school-aged populations. And when families do have children, especially in the urban core, they often don't stay here once their children reach school age because of the rising cost of housing. So we have a decline in birth rates, we have fewer children, and then when families are having children, they often go to the suburbs so that they can have more affordable housing. And so when you think about all of these factors together, the board then decided that they are going to call for a right-sizing study, which they did in June. The right-sizing study asked the superintendent and the superintendent's team to do an analysis to see how we can correct this situation that has persisted in the district for a long period of time. And so they call for the right sizing in June on the 20th, and we began working towards how we would come up with a fair and equitable way to provide feedback to the board around how we could correct this long-standing situation. One of the things that we did during that time is we conducted quite a few what we call design incubator sessions, where we brought in principals, we brought in families, And we asked, and all the departments, and we asked questions about what did we want to come out of right sizing, and what were the kinds of outcomes that we wanted to avoid, because we wanted to be very intentional, and we wanted to do this in a way that ensured that our San Antonio ISD familia remained strong throughout the process. So one of the things that we did in preparation for our initial recommendation that we took to the board on September 18th was to engage in creating a framework for how we would be making that decision in leading up to our final recommendation that we would make to the board on November 13th. And so on your tables, you have a document that looks like this, where we attempted to create a framework that we could then take out to our community. So we looked at 3 categories. One was the category of values, one was primary criteria, and the other was secondary criteria, and we went out to our community. We had 14 meetings. And we used a similar process to what we did in the design incubators. We simply asked the questions, and we asked our families to give us feedback. And then we took that feedback, we analyzed it for patterns and trends, and what you see here in red are the edits and additions that we made based on feedback from our community. So this document, this decision framework, is our co-created framework, a framework that we partially contributed to and that our community partially contributed to. And we combined our best thinking to create this decision framework. This decision framework is what we use to make our recommendations to the board, our initial recommendations on September 18th. And I just want to go over the 3 components that you're looking at. The values that we are committing to ensure we have strong academic programs, to ensure that there's a continuity of services, and to ensure that all students have an equitable opportunity to receive resources that under the current conditions they don't have. Because when we have small schools that don't generate enough funding to run, we have to take that money from our bigger schools and give it to our smaller schools, which by default means that the monies that students receive that they need for services, they don't fully receive at their school if it's a large school, because we take that and give it to our smaller schools. Then our primary criteria, that has gone from some general recommendations, you'll see, to some very defined recommendations. So we said we do want to ensure that our schools are large enough to be self-sufficient. But what we didn't do is identify a number. And our community helped us do that. And you can see those here on the framework. We also had questions about facility use. What are some appropriate numbers that we could use to say when a building is efficiently being used? And then our third criteria is our contextual criteria. And that is making sure that we are investing in our neighborhoods, in our schools, and making sure that we're taking into account all of the other information that might be very important to ensure that we are, at the end of this process, having stronger, richer academic opportunities for our students. So you can see this document here. You can see there's a lot of red on it because we did make quite a few edits based on our community feedback. And so we took this information and we tried to apply it as fair and consistently across all of our schools. So we didn't just look at small schools. We looked at all of our schools. And we put them through this rigorous process of analysis using the framework. Our recommendation included closures. These are schools that would actually be closed and the buildings would no longer be used in that capacity for those particular students. We had mergers. Mergers helped us solve some other challenges. For example, when we have some schools that are oversubscribed and there's a lot of desire for families to choose those schools, but they no longer have space, we saw some opportunity to expand some of those programs and keep other schools open by doing that expansion. And then we have some redesigns. And the redesigns allowed us to improve programming by moving some of the grade levels off of that campus so that we can have a stronger program. So in these two examples, the middle school grades are moving off of these campuses so that we can create a larger, richer, and stronger elementary program. And then we have one relocation. And the relocation recommendation was because we have a commitment to provide Montessori opportunities. We have 2 schools in our district. But still Montessori is in a building that is inadequate according to our thriving profile. While they do have bond money, we believe the bond money wouldn't be significant enough to bring that building up to standard. So it made sense for us that this program could move to another building that would allow for the expansion and would allow for them to make better use of those bond dollars. So you can see these schools here. One of the things that we asked ourselves in the recommendation is, are we in fact creating better schools, and in the process of creating better schools and stronger, richer programs, is it or did we create an unintentional consequence of creating additional inequities? And so part of what we did internally was to conduct an equity audit. This is what we would consider our own personal audit. And it talked about, it covered several areas, but the 3 that I want to highlight are the 3 questions that you see here. How did the right sizing actions positively or negatively impact our commitment to equity for major student groups? And what our data shows us is that the closing campuses closely mirror the district-wide demographic data, suggesting that no particular student group was disproportionately impacted. We also wanted to know, were there any disenfranchised, any or of our more disenfranchised student groups negatively impacted? And the data suggests no, that statistically, there does not appear to be any disproportionate impact to any students, particularly our students who already are underrepresented. The third question that we wanted to know was, how did decisions related to school closures, mergers, or other changes ensure equity and inclusivity in the process? And the analysis demonstrated that we did adhere to our commitment of equity. So in this analysis of our recommendation, we believe that we did not take any actions that would take us further away from our commitment to equity. That in fact, we will get closer to equity by providing a richer and more consistent and equitable distribution of our resources. I do want to share that this audit was internal, and we are in the process of commissioning an external equity audit. And that equity audit will be much more extensive because in addition to looking at this kind of information, it will also expand, should the board choose to accept our recommendation on November 13th, it would expand to include other kinds of community engagement that will help us determine what might happen to specific buildings in specific communities, because that needs to have a rich community engagement component. The first part of the equity audit, however, we anticipate receiving prior to our recommendation to the board so that we would be able to use that in our final recommendation. Many of you may have heard of Dr. Terrence Green. He's out of the University of Texas at Austin, and he is probably one of the nation's most notable researchers, especially as it relates to school closures. So he does have a significant background in this area. And we have been very clear that we want him to be very direct with us and very honest with us in his assessment. We also have the Alliance. Alejandra Lopez is part of our little subcommittee in working on the parameters of the equity audit, as is Dr. Aleman from Trinity University. And then we know that many people are going to be significantly impacted by these decisions. The purpose of doing this is that the group that should be most significantly impacted are our students, and that is in a positive way that ensures that they have the education that they're entitled to, and that it shouldn't depend on what school, what neighborhood, what classroom you're in, that it should be assured and guaranteed consistently across our district. But we know that there are others that have very strong feelings about right sizing. It could be challenging, changing schools if you're a staff member and you've been in that school for a long time. It could also be challenging for family members. And so we have a significant commitment to ensure that when we go through this, we're engaging in this process with compassion and with a lot of forethought. So we have a document that we call our Empower Plan, and you have a half sheet on your table that will allow you access to our website. We have published as much information as possible on our website. So virtually every piece of information we collect, we have published and made publicly available on our website. We also have a link to this Empower Plan that I'm referencing. Currently, I think it's 125 pages or so. And I know that when people look at it, they say, wow, that's a lot of work that y'all have done. It sounds like your recommendation is a done deal. And we have been very clear, our recommendation is absolutely not a done deal. We are currently in the process of engaging with our communities based on our initial recommendation. And the purpose of those the second round of community meetings is to get feedback from our community. And we also, in addition to getting feedback from our community on our recommendation, want to be clear and make a commitment to them that we intend to work with them and stand side by side with them as we go through this process. But when people look at this Empower Plan, they say, wow, that's a lot of work that you've done. Are you sure it's not a done deal? And it's not a done deal. However, we were faced with a decision. Either we put a significant amount of effort in these months while we have an opportunity to answer these important questions and be prepared should the board take action on November 13th, or we wait until November 13th and we have no answers for our staff and our families should the board choose to adopt the recommendation. And then it would take us several more months. So our belief is that if we do all of this work on the Empower Plan and the board takes no action, no problem. We'll put that book aside because it will not be needed. But should the board take action, we absolutely have to be ready, because not being ready means we leave our staff and our families in limbo about decisions. And this is a wonderful opportunity for us to share this information, which we've done at the community meetings, so that we can continue to get feedback on this plan. So that should the board take action on November 13th, we're ready to have a strong implementation in how we're going to work with our staff, what are our commitments, how will teachers move from one school to another, how will we make those decisions, and how will we ensure that our parents have a seamless transition from one school to the next. So that really is what is in the Empower Plan. It is our commitment to how we are going to support our staff and our students. Okay. We hope you take some time to look through that document. We would welcome your feedback on any part of it. We are still, like Dr. Bird said, in the middle of our community engagement. We have invited our community to explore our data, and as I said, we've made it all publicly available. We share our Empower plan, and of course, we engage in community conversations. I would invite you, if you have not yet been able to attend one of our meetings, Zoomies. We do have some of our meetings on Zoom. You're welcome to join us. Our purpose in having the community meetings, again, is to listen and is to get feedback from the community that we could use to inform our final decisions. And we take all of that information and we'll use it in our deliberations. Two questions that we ask during the community feedback are related really to this framework. We have spent a significant amount of time thinking about this and trying to be really thoughtful and applying the framework consistently and fairly. And what we want to know from our community is, where did we do this well? Where did we align to the framework and do it well? And the other question that we ask is, how could we apply the framework to improve the recommendation? Where could we have done a better job? And so we encourage them during the meeting to give us feedback around these two questions. Okay. So now I would like to engage in a panel discussion, and we have some members with us today that I am going to invite here. We have some chairs in the front: Mario Barrera, Alejandra Lopez, Charity Nathaniel, Virginia Parker, and Melinda Teplitsky. Yay, thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. So I think we just need there. Gave it to you. No, we're passing it to me already. All right, I'm going to give a moment for the camera so that our Zoom participants can see our panel. Thank you for joining us in this conversation today. I see some of you who are directly impacted by our recommendations, and some of you who have been helping us through the process, and others of you who are wonderful supporters and contributors to SAISD. So I'm going to ask you to start off, and maybe we go from here this way. And if you could introduce yourself and let us know what your relationship is with SAISD.
Right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mario Barrera. I am an attorney at a rather large firm. I have been a district resident since 2001, April of 2001 to be exact. I live in the Monte Vista area. I know quite a number of you all. I never had the pleasure of sending my kids to SAISD schools simply because when we moved in, the schools that were in our neighborhood were simply not an option for us. I sent my kids to private school, but I didn't ask anyone to help me on that. I paid for that. Wasn't looking for tax dollars, but my wife and I are both products of public schools, and so we've always believed in the public school system, and that's why I've been here for, I think, 15, 16 of those 22 years trying to help this district improve. I've worked with so many superintendents, so many school boards. I was a part of the 2010 bond, the 2016 bond, the 2020 bond. I see a bunch of my fellow colleagues from the San Antonio ISD Foundation, and I've been on the foundation since 2009. So I have a vested interest in seeing this through and improving our district.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Virginia Parker. I'm the proud principal of Highland Park Elementary. This is my third year as principal in SAISD and at Highland Park. I've been an educator for 20 years. I'm a product of public education, although it was in Germany. I grew up in Germany, but I did go to public schools there. My children both are went to public schools, and they're now grown adults, very successful grown adults. I'm affected by the right sizing because Highland Park is on the list for potential closure. We had our right sizing meeting last night, and we've done a lot of work at my campus with the students, teachers, staff, and families.
I am Charity Nathaniel. I am the principal of Sarah King Elementary. This is my second year as principal in that community, but I have a long history with SAISD. My first school I attended was Washington Elementary, way back like 10 years ago. This will be my 19th year in education, and I am going to be affected with the right sizing framework if it is passed, because our campus is slated to receive 2 different schools of students that will be merged with Sarah King Elementary. And again, I also am a huge advocate of public education. I've been a recipient, all of my children are. I have 2 that have already graduated high school and 2 that are still in public education, and so I'm a huge advocate for it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alejandra Lopez. I use she, her pronouns. I currently serve as the president of the San Antonio Alliance of Teachers and Support Personnel. We are the union that represents workers in the district, and we are affiliated with both the AFT and the NEA, which are the largest national education unions. I grew up in San Antonio. I went to Southwest High School because that's the first question that everyone asks you, so a proud dragon. And I live in the district as well. My neighborhood school, which is Riverside Park Elementary, will be affected by right sizing if the initial recommendations are to pass, because those students will be displaced from their campus. And so I, like everyone else here, I'm a huge public education advocate, and I'm happy to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Melinda Orta Toplitsky. I am a parent and grandparent representative, and I had the privilege to go on the trips to Jeffco and Cleveland, and I was very amazed at the different avenues that they use to close their schools. But I am a parent. My daughter goes to CastMed, and that's one of the smaller schools, and I'm a grandparent. My grandbabies go to Graebner, one of the bigger elementary schools. So I grew up in SAISD. I'm SAISD educated, so are all my 12 siblings. And we have always been community advocates, and I'm just blessed to be able to be on this board.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask the panel to reflect on the process that you've heard that SAISD has been undergoing. And what do you believe, some of the highlights of the process, things that maybe we've gotten right in the process?
I'll start since I have the mic. So like I said, we had our first neighborhood meeting last night, and I think it was really, really powerful, successful in the fact that it gave our families a voice. We had a lot of teachers and some parents at the initial neighborhood meetings before the proposal came out. But yesterday, it was at our campus, and we had, I think, well over 200 family members and teachers and staff members there. And just the fact that anyone who was there was given the mic who wanted it, and there were people to listen. And I think that's really important. And that's what I was hearing from a couple of people after the meeting, that how grateful they were that there were people there that were listening to them. Some of the comments were not always positive. There was a lot of anger, fear, sadness, mostly fear. But But yeah, I think that was really powerful just to have that neighborhood meeting at our school. We were so worried that it was going to get moved to a high school because maybe we had a lot of parents that were interested, but it was nice that we were able to have it at the campus where people felt comfortable and they wanted to come, they were able to come, and their voices were heard.
Thank you.
I can go. I think first and foremost that there is a process, right? I think to take a step back, those of us that have lived in San Antonio and have witnessed this process take place in other districts can celebrate the fact that SAISD is really trying to chart a new path forward, one that has a clear start and has clear milestones where there is opportunity for feedback. I know on our end, for our union and the Schools Our Students Deserve Coalition, knowing that this was coming down the pipeline was incredibly powerful for us. And in June, we were actually able to release 10 positions that really grappled with the right sizing process and really asserted some positions that we felt if the district was going to move forward, it would be best to do it in this way. And so we were able to get those front and centered, the first of which is calling for a community vote for the future of each of the schools, which is something that we feel very strongly that the community should be able to exercise a democratic process, just like they do when they become in-district charters. And so the fact that there has been a process has meant that many of us have been engaging and grappling with these difficult questions and the challenging situation that we're in for a number of months, not long enough, because one of the other positions is that the process should go longer. And in one of the design incubators that we had the opportunity to participate in, everyone in the room agreed that a year was actually the minimum that the process should take for people to really engage authentically in this. But the fact that we are here and that we've seen several milestones go through and we've had these opportunities to engage, I think is really a positive reflection on the district and the investment that everyone has in the process.
Thank you. And I'd want to point out that we also have a member of the Alliance on our transition team who is working internally on a daily basis and consistently so that we can have a nice through line with the Alliance and we can have that voice at the table without having to call a meeting with Alejandra every single day.
I would also just add that I appreciate the differing perspectives that have been welcomed. I've attended a few of the neighborhood meetings, and I appreciate that our district has allowed, as Ms. Parker was saying, all voices. There was no time limit. They let people know, like, if you want to express, then we are here to hear you, but also inviting the different perspectives so that we can make a balanced decision with all the perspectives considered is, to me, revolutionary. I know I saw the process on the news with some of the neighboring districts, and I didn't see this happening with the community meetings and all of that. It was more all at the central office, and so I think that we promote familia because we ask everyone to come to the table.
And I think, from my perspective, the things that we're doing right is we asked the community to come in. We have asked them to come in, not and to voice their opinions, but also to come with ideas on how to fix these things, because it's going to take all of us as a familia to be able to go forward. And change is always fearful, but when you go with the insight that, okay, they asked me to voice my opinion, which is what I'm going to do, but if we could just change this aspect, or if they could see it from my eyes, and I think that's what the district has certainly been able to do, is let us hear what you're thinking, let us hear your fears. I've been to many community meetings, and Collins Garden, I went to Collins Garden, and it's also on the list, and the passion with which those people spoke, even the little children spoke and said, don't do this, think about this, have you walk in my shoes. Walk in my shoes down these roads that you want to close the school, but you have Nogalitos, you have the highway, you have the tracks. Walk in our shoes And I'm glad that Dr. Aquino accepted that and said, okay, yes, it's something we need to consider. You know, walk these neighborhoods, consider these communities, because you're not just impacting the students, you're impacting the small businesses in those areas. And I'm just so grateful that we have small business represented here.
Thank you.
Let me just, for those of you that know me, I've always just kind of spoken kind of like Alejandra has. And so when I hear words like engage authentically, it kind of sort of affects me because I do think that we have been engaging authentically. I think we can all agree that there is a process. The problem is, let's be frank here, whether it's 5 months, whether it's a year, no one's going to be happy with school closures. And those schools that are on the preliminary list, if they get off of it, they're going to be the first ones to advocate that the process worked. Those schools that remain on it are going to be the ones that are going to say the process failed. I think you're right. No one likes change. Everyone fears change. I've been to 4 of these meetings. I went to 2 of the first round community meetings over at Twain and at Hawthorne. And I think the district got it right. I mean, it was standing room only at both of those. And everyone was fully engaged. Everyone had an opportunity to come in there and sort of voice. There were no time limitations. The meetings went on for quite some time. By the time the list is announced, I go then to the first community meeting over at Lowell. And I found that to be absolutely one of the best meetings around because people were afraid. They were concerned, but we had our city council representative there. We had other people, other elected political officials, and everyone had a really great engaging conversation. By the time we got to Lamar, that meeting was out of control. And I've never been at a meeting where, honestly, people treated each other with such disrespect and anger. There was yelling, hooting, hollering. People weren't allowed to sometimes make their point. And that's a shame because I get it. I mean, I was in the 2020 bond where Lamar was one of those schools. I walked Lamar. It's a wonderful school, and they've done a lot of what they were asked to do. But at the end of the day, they didn't meet one of the metrics. It's a hard thing to do, but I think bottom line, Patty, we all can agree there is a process here. How the outcome comes out is where we're going to decide whether it worked or not.
Thank you. When the board was grappling with this decision and in the process of determining whether they had to call for this resolution, one of the things that we all had to deal with, the board and the district leadership, is do we persist with the current inequities where it will not be possible for us to have an equitable distribution of resources, or do we do something about it? Knowing full well that going out to our communities, people would be angry, sad, and have many, many different emotions. But feeling an intense commitment to do what is right so that we can deliver on our promise of ensuring that every child in every school has that high quality education. And so ultimately the board calls for this resolution. We go through this process. We're working really hard to try and get it right. We're not always maybe getting it right 100%. But in considering where we've been thus far, what wonderings do you have that are still outstanding for you about this process?
I'll begin again. Last night at our meeting, I heard a lot of families talking about trust and having lost trust. So my wondering is, how do we regain that trust? And I think we're working on it. I think the transparency, the having a plan, is all working towards that. But I do feel like we need to do a lot of work on regaining the trust. I think principals have a huge responsibility here because our communities trust us. And what I was hearing is the distrust for the district. It was definitely against the district. So we have to be that we have to continue to be that person. We kind of walk this line between we're district employees, but we're principals at this school, and so we have to keep walking that line. But being that person that brings that trust back to our campuses.
My wonderings are along the lines of what Mr. Mario said was when we were addressing the issue of those that close, and if that ends up happening where all of the schools close, or if there are some that do not, how that will read with the community for those schools that ended up, going forward with the closure. As opposed to some of them who feel like they passionately advocated for their school and still were closed. So that's a wondering. And the other is the enrollment. Is it really going to help our enrollment? Will people leave? I know when I was at the Collins Garden meeting, because of the proximity and because of Zarzamora and all of those things, they were saying how they didn't think they would send their kids across Zarzamora because of how the traffic, and it's such a busy street, and then to Kelly under the highway, all of those things, they couldn't walk. And there were some neighborhood charter schools. So will we lose students to charter schools? Those are things that I think about often. And lastly, right, I have a lot of wonderings. As a receiving campus, I wonder about our space and about our facility. We have an upgraded facility, but we do have a bathroom issue and things of that nature. We have a bathroom schedule because we do have a bathroom issue with the nearly 600 students that we have. And so receiving students, capacity issues and things of that nature, and facility concerns, even though we are a newly remodeled 2010, it's not newly, but 2010 remodeled beautiful campus. But just thinking about 700 or more students utilizing our current facility.
2010 for schools is very new. I just want to extend on the concept of trust, because I do think it is something that we really have to grapple with, right? When you live in historically divested from working class communities, like the majority of the communities that comprise SAISD, you become accustomed to things being done to you. You very, very seldom get to exercise what I believe to be a universal human right, which is that of self-determination, and a community getting to determine what happens to them. We know that schools are the heart of many of our communities, and in SAISD, there is a legacy of decisions being made that did not bring the community in. And so what has happened now is that schools find themselves on the initial closure list as a result of decisions that were made at central office that were not made with the community. So now you're having a double negative impact, right? You are further disempowering and disenfranchising that community. And there is a lack of trust because at the moment, there doesn't seem to be a track record of the district being able to make good on their promises. And so what I hear from many parents and community members is, well, how do we know that they're going to get this right? And what we have asked is that the number of schools be reduced. 19 is a fifth of our campuses. So if the district leadership doesn't do this right, it's going to have a profound impact, not just on students now, but for generations to come. And I think the other side of trust is that we should have trust in our community. And the best way to demonstrate that trust is by giving them the ability to vote on what happens. The trust has to be both ways. You're asking for trust from the community for district leadership. Well, I have an innate sense of trust in our communities that they will make the best choice for their children and for their communities. And if the district really is saying that the best choice is for their school to close, it's the district leadership's responsibility to present that compelling argument.
Thank you.
Well, you're talking to a lawyer, and so I'm sorry, with all due respect, the community elected the trustees to represent the community, and that's where the vote lies. And I've known previous trustees, I know the current trustees, I know they take their roles seriously. How we could get the community involved in a community-wide effort to vote on school closures, you talk about, how do we do that? How do we accomplish that realistically? It's a great soundbite, and I don't disagree that communities need to get more involved, but that has been the whole point of these community meetings. To your point about the district needs to get it right, you know what? We're not going to get it completely right. We haven't gotten it right. We've got a school from the 2010 bond that we're looking at closing. We didn't look at it back then when I was talking with Trustee Radel and everyone at that board. We knew that Ogden needed help. We went and invested. We invested in Sarah King. When 2020 came around, we looked at Lamar. And as I said, we walked those halls and we had these ideas. Pedro, at that point, was thinking we were going to get our enrollment up. We didn't. But guess what? We're not the only school that's in this situation. And we can talk about Edgewood and others, but go look at Northeast. Northeast is having the same issues. Good gosh, I was talking to Judy Galehood from the foundation. Plano is now talking about closing schools. I mean, we're talking about the rich DFW Metroplex, and they're losing students. So are we going to get it right? Let's not have that, a great expectation, but I think if we can have a realistic conversation here, no, we're not going to get 100% right. I think that's too high of a standard. I think we can do our best and work on what we're doing here, but getting 100%, it's not going to happen, I don't think.
I agree, and not just right, but getting 100% of everyone happy with the decision is just not realistic. But I do feel that doing this is the right thing for the SAISD familia. I worked in Northside for a while, and just the comparison of the number of students and the number of buildings that we have here in SAISD and that we have in Northside, we must do this. We have to do this. Do I want Highland Park to close? No, I don't. Will I be okay with the decision if that's what happens? Yes, I will. Knowing that in the end, it'll be better for all of our students, not just Highland Park kiddos, but all of the students.
And back to the question of wonderings, I think my biggest wonder is how many of these students are we truly impacting? I find my children and grandchildren are very privileged. My daughter's at CastMed. She has wonderful staff. A lot of doctors are teaching her, and she's growing. You know, her mental capacity is growing, and they truly consider the student in everything that they do there at CastMed. And it's one of the smaller schools. And then I think about my granddaughters are very privileged because they've had STEM, and they're in kinder and first and second, and they've had STEM already. And I'm super excited about that. But these other kids in these smaller schools that are disadvantaged, they don't know what to expect yet. And that hurts me to think, what are these children truly missing? They don't even know. The parents don't know, and the grandparents don't know, because we haven't truly presented what it can be. And I think if we give parents and students a vision of, this is what you could have, a true visual. Sure, we can say it in words, but create a video, create something that they can see, because a lot of us, like myself, are kinesthetic learners. And if you show me a video, oh, that's what you've been talking about. That's what we can have, because I promise you, some of these kids are sad when they see their friends in other schools or their cousins in other schools, and they have this and this and that. Really? I don't have that here. And they get sad. And I have that with my daughter's best friend. She was going to Harris, and Leah was at ALA, and it was completely different, their educations. And I could see the sadness in Journey's face looking at Leah like, wow, y'all get to do that, really? And I just think by the grace of God, my children and grandchildren have been privileged with better schools throughout their, right now through their lives.
Okay, last question, and it's going to be a little test. In one sentence. Friday test. No. In one sentence, as the district leadership continues to engage in this work and our move towards our final recommendation for the board on November 13th, in one sentence, what would you recommend to the district leadership?
I'll start.
Mhm.
One sentence. I was like, I said, well, I just fail. I'm going to fail so bad. Well, I'm not known to be brief. In one sentence-ish, I would say to consider, to consider our students and their needs. That's more than a sentence because that would be a period. But I'm going to give it a semicolon and say, thank you. And say, considering our students' needs, I have a campus where we have students in classrooms of 35 with one teacher. In grade, I have 29 kindergartners in a classroom in both of my kinder classes, and third grade with 33 and fifth grade with 35. And so that's not what's best for kids. Student to teacher ratios make a huge difference in achievement. And I want a fighting chance for my students as much as, and for all of our students, as much as I do for all of our students.
Thank you.
My one sentence is walk a mile in the kids' shoes.
Thank you.
My sentence would be let the community decide their future.
And I'm going to echo on what Charity said. Keep the kids in mind. Do what's best for the kids.
I would say look to the future, but take into account the kids, the community, and staff.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. We appreciate your insights and your feedback, and we are taking notes. We will go and take that back for further reflection. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patty.
You can return now to your seats, and I'm going to now give the rest of you an assignment, and it's going to be a quick jot task, and the task is going to be posted up here. Okay. So on your table activity, we're going to give you, everyone here, to give us feedback. And so we're going to ask that you take this document here where you have the decision framework that we co-created with our community, and we're going to ask you to reflect on the same questions that we gave to the community. Where do you think we got it right? How did we apply this correctly? And how could we apply the framework to improve the recommendation? And you have some Post-its on your table. If you would put one idea on one Post-it only, because what we're going to ask you to do in a minute, you see the posters around the room. Shortly, after you have time for reflection, I'm going to ask you to put your posters in this order. Meets, where we could do better, and then if there are any lingering questions you have regarding right sizing. And they could be questions you have or questions that you want us to ask ourselves and consider. Okay? So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes, and you can brainstorm one idea on one poster. Where did we meet? Where could we do better? And do you have any lingering questions?
Ryan, I saw the video.
Oh, hey, you're next year. You're next year. I'm going to sign you up.
I lived a block from Gravener and maybe like 5-minute drive to Burbank. Maybe like a 30-minute drive. I ended up moving. I live next to Pawnee Lake. I should be going to the south side high school. The east side center of all of that. I live like La Jolla. So driving there, I used to drive like 25, 30 minutes to school every day. Yeah. And so it sucked when it was like, oh, like I can't go home. Let's say I don't have a my car, my stuff, whatever. What's good is that my sister's house was a block away, so it was walkable to go to Burbank. But that was like last resort. It's like, oh, that's good. And I mean, it is definitely accountable, like something you should take into account. For this company, it's like, oh, my mom or dad are working 2 6. And like, what am I going to do? I'm not in sports, I'm not whatever. We're like, that's another thing. Like, as soon as school is out, it's like, all right, everybody else, it's like, oh, wait, unless you have to.
So wherever,
Yeah. So, transportation. Closing a school, then transportation should be. Yeah.
Okay, you look like you've been engaged in a lot of conversation. Does anyone need more time? You can hold up 1 minute, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Okay, in 2 minutes. If you finished, you can go ahead and start putting your stickies. We've got some posters over here and over here. It doesn't matter which posters you use. It's nice seeing you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. My husband's doing
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm glad you could make it.
surprised with this. What's that? The student ratio. And they want me to answer this or no?
Do better coordinating with, I like the way.
I think that's
To address
I
this
think
one,
you
'cause
should.
Yeah, I know. I had it. Don't we here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the way.
Oh, do you want to take these and we can start?
No, you can
Oh,
answer
wait,
this
okay.
one.
This one's really good from there.
Okay.
A lot of people use them.
That was indirect effect. Community members that don't have kids that go to school, how do we reach them? How do we get to them?
Right.
Awesome.
Okay, if you have not put up your Post-its, if you would do that now. Does anyone have any Post-its to put up? No? Wow, y'all are fast. Okay.
Okay, good.
Yes. Thanks. Lingering question right here. Perfect.
Well, we're doing better.
Okay. Here, right here. Oh, the Zoom questions. Perfect. Yes. Are you going to text us those or? Yes. Okay. We're going to take a few moments for your lingering questions, and those of you on Zoom, we're going to be, if you have questions, we're going to be collecting them too. And so there are some questions here that I think we have a team, and we're going to try and answer. We're going to give it about 5 minutes or so, and we'll try and answer as many as we can in 5 minutes. So one of the questions relates to how do we intend in the mergers, what is the planning around the mergers? So in the Empower Plan, you'll find that it is 5 sections. So one is about staff, one is about students. We also have a section that's all just about moving resources. And then we have one section on blending the familia and another on what we intend to do with the buildings. And when you look at the Empower Plan, you'll see that those are not, there's nothing in them, it's just our overview. And the reason is those 2 sections require another round of community engagement. But our intent in blending the familia is to ensure that we're working with our community. We recognize you can't just simply squish 2 schools together, that we need to reconsider the leadership, the culture. We've even talked about the mascots. We've talked about how we provide significant opportunities immediately for students to come together, for teachers to come together, for families to come together throughout the spring, through the summer, and the beginning of the year. so that when children come on the first day, it's not my first time meeting these students that are in my class. I have had activities together with them. We've had field days or field trips or things like that where we can bring the kids together to know one another. But we intend to also make that plan public and to create that plan alongside of our educators and our leaders that are impacted in those schools. Mhm.
One of the things that I want to add to that is this is why I'm so inspired by our familia, our community, because in this concept of blending the familia, we have heard in some of our neighborhood meetings, we heard from the presidents of 2 neighborhood associations and the president of the PTA of 2 schools that are going to merge and said, you know, if this goes through, please tap on us so that we can come together as both neighborhoods and come together and building a stronger culture where everybody is welcome. Also, want to thank Ryan from Up Partnership that, you know, he reached out to President Martinez, reached out to me and said, is there a role that we can help you in terms of once the decision in bringing and building a stronger, more inclusive culture? And as Patty said, we have this huge description of our activity for blending the familia, but we are going to rely on all of you to help us bring our families together. We heard from Virginia Parker and from Alejandra Lopez on the panel, which I thought was a very powerful discussion. There's a lot of repairing and healing and trust that we need to do. And you can not only put that on us, on the board and the district leadership. We have to do this as a larger city coming together. Help us, because if this goes through, we need to go through the healing process. We need to regain the trust of everybody, our staff, our students, and this is where the Children's Cabinet and everybody that you represent are going to be instrumental in helping us achieve that.
Since you're
Since I'm standing before that, I do want to acknowledge Trustee Torres, Stephanie Torres, who's here. Thank you, Trustee Torres, for being here with us. Yes.
I was going to say, since you're standing, and this is taxing all my brain cells, can you talk a little bit about the impact that you foresee on the student-teacher ratios?
Great question, and I saw it posted several times, and that has come a lot at the community meeting. There is this misconception that when you merge schools into one, the campus is going to be big, that we're going to be overstuffing classrooms. That's actually not our goal. Our goal is the opposite. Right now, you heard from Charity in terms of saying that she has classes of 30 and 35, 29 at kindergarten, right? But I go to schools and classroom where we have classes of 10 students, and they're not self-contained special ed. That's because we're distribute like that. So what we want to do, I'll tell you this, the average class size at the elementary school currently, the average is 17 students per teacher, but she has 30 and 1. That means, you know, mathematically, we have to have places where they have lower than 17 if we have 30. Virginia has 10. She has a class size of 10. Now, of course, everybody would like their kids to be in a class size of 10, but that's not sustainable. So now, how can we say to the families of Sarah King, you're not as important as the kids in Highland Park, because they can get 10. A parent at not a Highland Park, the one before, just forget the school, a parent said, but we like that our class is so small. And I said, it's made a difference for my daughter. He said, I know, but that's what we want for every single kid. And that's what we're not able to do. So we anticipate that with the right size, we're going to have more manageable class size. In some of these places, class size of 20 or 21, which will make a difference for the workload of our teachers and it'll make a difference for the academic outcomes for our students. You're probably wondering, but if the average is 17, why is it that you're not promising that we're going to get an average class size of 17? And there's a reason why we would love to do that, because remember, we're not getting rid of any of our staff. So the reason is mathematically, to get a class size, guarantee you a class size of 17, would have meant closing 50 buildings, because that's the amount of excess capacity that we have. If we had closed 50, I could guarantee you class size of 17. But we can't, and we are not doing that. Our threshold that came from the community, we began in our mind an elementary school that is an average size was 500. But community said do 350. The average school size in elementary in the state of Texas is 544, and our treasure is 350. Because if we had done 500, it would have been devastating for the system. But we believe that this will be lead us to much more manageable class size.
How do we ensure that these vacated buildings will not become a blight to the community?
And we hear that a lot. We have made a strong commitment, the board, my team, that we don't want to have an abandoned building in any neighborhood. It does a lot to that community. It could be demoralizing in terms of having that. I know that in the past we have not kept our promises, but I am asking us, let's not allow the past to dictate our present and our future. Hopefully we have learned for that. So we're going to have a process where we're going to go to all the community. And this is a great place for the community to exercise their voice. What do they want to see in their buildings? But knowing that we have to find a not-for-profit or a community-based organization to want to do this, because we don't have the resources to manage, like some recommendation was to convert some of them into senior citizen center. Great. If we have a community that wants to do that, we will lease the building for $1 a year, as long as you're providing a service to the community. What I do want to be fully transparent, it's not going to happen right away in terms of turning all these buildings, because after the decision is made, we're going to go to the community and ask, and then we have to find partners. But we have been already talking to potential partners who have approached us. I'm talking to some museums who said, oh my God, we need extra classroom space. That it will be great if you can do that for us. So everybody's coming. So we are committed to not leaving an abandoned building in the community.
I think this is the last question. How many more do we have time for? 2 more? Okay. There's still a lot of questions about what's going to happen to the staff, the principals, the teachers. Will they lose their jobs?
So the answer to that is absolutely not. Remember, our hope, and I said our hope, is because we're also giving teachers our choices. Teachers, instructional assistant, we hope that they will move with the students. So if Highland Park is going to Highland Hills and Japhet, that the teachers will want to follow. And I said, I hope, because the teacher might say, you know what, given this, we want to go to another school. And we will honor, just like we will honor the choice for our parents as well. So we're not doing this to reduce our force. So we want them to do it. But we have said, if not, we have enough space. Right now, we still have teacher vacancies. We have about almost 200 teacher vacancies. And with principal are the ones who probably should be the most concerned, but I have spoken to our principal, because you only need one principal per school. But I've been here, and I've had 2 rounds of principal selection. This year, 18 new principal. Previous year, 12 new principal. We have attrition in terms of that. We still have schools today that are led by retired principals because we couldn't find. But we also have said, in the event that we don't find a row as a principal, we have frozen all our central office administrators position. Some that are higher than being a principal, we have them filled with retired folks intentionally today, so that we can, if we have displaced, that they can pursue other options. We don't want to lose anyone, and we are committed to that. They will have roles within our familia.
Last question. What's the alternative should the board not choose to adopt the package on November 13th?
So it's a great question. First, I've said it since I got here. I'm here to serve the community. If the community doesn't want this to happen and the board votes down the package, I am committed to. Some people say, would you leave? I said, no, I already bought a house. I'm staying here. I'm dying in San Antonio. This is where I'm going to die. So I am committed to doing this, and I will respect this. But I've also been very public about the implications of this decision. I cannot have the community then continuously asking me to reduce class size of 30 to a more manageable. I cannot have staff saying, I don't want to teach a split class. I don't want to be assigned to multiple locations. Why is it that we only have mental health support in 1 day a week in our building? I think Melinda, I don't know where Melinda is, if she's still here with us, but Melinda on the panel said it very, very clearly. Our kids notice the difference in terms of the resources. She says she has been privileged with her kids and her grandkids, but she knows that even within them, they were not receiving the same. Right in the same room, last year, I have a superintendent student advisory council, and they chose to focus on two topics, mental health and school safety, which is a really sad state of affair when our students are concerned about their safety in their building and their mental health. That tells you a lot about what we're dealing. But in one of those, I remember an 8th grader from one of our middle school came to me when they were talking about some school had all these resources and other, and looked at me and said, Mr. Superintendent, why is it that I am not getting all those resources that other kids are getting on the other school? He turns to me and said, is it that you and the board care more for the kids that receive that you don't care for the kids at my school? Because we deserve that. This was from an 8th grader. So think of, I was so in awe with this 8th grader. I know I see Jean here with that cast who have done such an incredible job in lifting the voices of students and student agency. Talk about that student agency, that 8th grader was holding us accountable. So if this doesn't, that's the reality. There has to be some trade-off. And I also want to remember, because at one of the meetings said, don't you know that if you go with the school closure, you will be the superintendent of nothing? And I said, yeah, but if we also keep the status quo, we will not have a district. And I will be also the superintendent of nothing. So those are some of the implications of not doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to now turn it over to closure.
To closure. We're at 10. I, again, want to thank all of you and the people on Zoom for coming, spending the time, holding us accountable, pushing our thinking, coming up with suggestions, helping us in this amazing journey. It takes a village to raise a child, and everybody who's here is embodying that African proverb. You're here because you care about the city, you care about our kids. You know, I have said this many times, and I'm looking at Richard Carranza, who has been a superintendent many years, and Sherry Kring, who's also been a superintendent, who's on Zoom. Don't know if I have any other superintendent here. But before I became a superintendent, this is my first superintendency, I was always heard being a superintendent is a lonely job. It's so lonely. And I have to tell you, this is my first and my only and last superintendency. I have never felt alone. I've never felt alone. I feel I'm embraced by the principal, by teachers. We are transparent. You're all here. So I've never felt like, oh my God, these challenges are for me and the board to resolve. San Antonio embodies the concept of familia, and you have shown that. That's why I enjoy this work. That's why it seems incredibly manageable. I was, as you heard from Virginia, last night was a tough meeting. A lot of anger, a lot of emotions, and we left there, and I had to go meet with somebody from the Gates Foundation. He said, "How did it go?" I said, "It was tough," and we were there for like 2 hours. 2 hours talking. He said, I'm just in awe. You're full of energy. You just came from a very difficult community meeting on school closures. Why?" And I said the same thing. This is something that my board, my community is coming together, and I'm not alone. So with that, I really want to thank you for honoring with your presence, your expertise, and we're going to need your help as we move forward to make sure that we have schools that are thriving and that are lifting every single student. So thank you very much for honoring with us with your presence.